What it is, Tyrus here, and this week on Nuff Said, dyslexia, still my friend. What it is, Tyrus here, and this is Nuff Said. This week I had the pleasure of sitting down with the amazing Fox favorite, Dr. Janette. From vaping to ER horror stories, we covered a lot on this one, folks. Try and learn something. Dr. Janette, thank you so much for doing Nuff Said today.
Thanks for having me.
Wow, you're a doctor and you're a TV personality, contributor, so that's pretty amazing. Two really tough fields to get into, and you are juggling both.
Yeah, Tyrus, I gotta tell you, I give all the credit to my mom. She's a widow and she raised me and my 5 brothers and sisters alone. My dad died in an accident when I was very young, and my mom was also a nurse, a registered nurse, so she kind of inspired me to go into medicine and to take care of, others, and I just kind of wanted to follow in her footsteps.
My mom was a nurse too.
Oh,
Were
okay.
you as afraid as the hospital as I was?
No, actually, after school when I was a kid, I would sneak into the hospital where she worked.
Really?
And watch her, and I didn't get in trouble, I didn't get caught, but I would watch her take care of, because she was a pediatric nurse, so I would watch her take care of the kids, and I was like, wow, that was just
She
amazing.
never threatened with the hospital and the shots when you were sick at home? You never got that?
No, I never did. I loved it.
Wow.
I loved the blood and guts.
Where did you grow up?
So I'm originally from New York, but I grew up in Florida. I ended up getting recruited to, don't laugh, Arkansas.
I went to school in Nebraska. Why would I laugh?
Okay.
Like, I get it.
Arkansas was beautiful. I did my medical training there, the University of Arkansas Medical Sciences, and that's really where I started volunteering, doing medical television. Once a week I would help host a show called Family Health Today, and we would talk about like asthma and diabetes and blood pressure, different topics so that the community can learn from, and it was all volunteer just to help educate the community. So when I started getting calls from Fox, hey, can you go down to Little Rock?
We're in Arkansas. We're out of school. We're doctoring it up now. So since we're gonna talk doctoring stuff, I'm gonna stethoscope it up. A lot of accessories. What was it like in Arkansas?
Well, I worked in rural Arkansas. There's a shortage of doctors, so I did my residency training at AHEC, part of University of Arkansas, and so we didn't have other residency programs, so we were able to do everything, whether it's reduce a dislocated shoulder or manage a heart attack or do some major lacerations or traumas. We were able to take care of just a variety of different
So you were in the
types of
Wild
patients.
West. You were a jack of all trades, master. You had to know everything.
To a certain degree, and I mean, if we had something really serious, I would try to phone for a helicopter and then fly out the patient to the nearest trauma center, which sometimes would be 2 or 3 hours away, just in an effort to save their life.
During your time in Arkansas, was there a crazy situation where you just were put in the thing where your skills were tested to the limits?
I would say I'll never forget, I was in rural Arkansas, Eureka Springs ER. There's 3 beds in that ER, and I'll never forget, I had a woman, her and her husband were on their motorcycles, and they don't wear helmets. It's not required by law, which I think it should be.
Arkansas.
Long story short, she was driving on a motorcycle on the mountain cliff, and she ended up somehow driving off the cliff. And
ooh, this sounds like a forensic file case.
she drove off accidentally off the cliff. Paramedics went to her, but an hour later, she ended up coming into the ER. And I'm like, oh my God, what is she doing here? I mean, she is bleeding out of every orifice. She can't breathe. So we quickly stabilized her, put in IVs, and I quickly got on the phone to locate a helicopter and called the nearest emergency room, which was about 3 hours away, to get her flown over there immediately, because the first hour is known as the golden hour. That's when, someone can die. And even though she was awake and alert, which is temporary, she was bleeding internally. So quickly got the helicopter there, and they flew her to the nearest trauma center. And as the helicopter was landing, she coded. She went unconscious. They were, doing CPR, resuscitating her. Hours later, I called the hospital and I said, can you tell me what room she's in? Because I knew if they gave me a room, that means she was still alive. And when I heard the nurse put her hand over the phone and said, it's the doctor, she wants to know if you're okay, can I tell her? And when I heard the patient on the other side saying, "Tell the doctor I said thank you," I knew she survived, and her life could have been taken right then and there. But that's something I'll never forget as long as I live. That was a major, major trauma.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Your sister was a military vet?
Yes.
Now, how awesome is that? Like,
she's my hero, Captain Julia Nesheiwat. Yep, she's an Iraq and Afghanistan war veteran, and she is a military intelligence officer and worked in the State Department, and currently the presidential envoy for hostage affairs. But she also deals a lot with climate change and national security as well. So she's my hero, and she's the one who inspired me to go and do everything that I've been doing. And so I really look up to her. She's truly a hero in every sense of the way.
All right, so now you eventually end up back in New York, because hence we're here. And this is where I first came in contact with you, the daily briefing with the great Dana Perino. So you've become a staple on Fox News with giving medical advice when we have situations, correct?
Yes. Especially done a lot of work with the opioid crisis. It's the most heartbreaking thing is when I'm in the ER and having to resuscitate a teenager who's, lost consciousness from a heroin overdose, and we do everything in our power to, try to keep them alive, give them Narcan and pump them with fluids and all sorts of medicines to keep their heart pumping. But I'll never forget having to tell their parents, we're sorry we lost him. And so we deal a lot with opioids and opioid overdoses and trying to educate the community and work on prevention and rehab and detox. And I had the opportunity to speak at the White House Opioid Summit to help promote, education and give ideas on how we can help combat this, because 25% of these drug addictions, come from prescriptions like Percocets and hydrocodone, that sort of thing. But the rest of it comes from drug dealers and, getting, drugs from family and friends and that sort of thing. So we just work really hard to try to do everything we can to try to fight that, combat it, and provide the resources for people to try to fight their addiction as well.
You just mentioned prescriptions.
Yeah.
In your opinion, do you think there's a lot of over-prescribing?
Well, yes, at one point there was. So doctors are in part to be held responsible, but they're only 20-25% responsible for that. The rest goes to the family members, grandma who leaves her Percocet bottle in her purse, or drug dealers as well. But nowadays, for example, in the state of New York, you have to have a DEA license, first of all, to write a prescription narcotic. And then I have to use a key fob, which I press the button, it gives me a 6-digit number. I have to enter it electronically into a computer system to electronically send a prescription to the pharmacy. But before I do that, I have to type in the patient's name and date of birth into a prescription monitoring database to look up to see where they prescribed a narcotic anywhere else in the country. And that way I can see a pattern. And sometimes patients don't know that we have that resource. And sometimes, sadly, we'll catch patients lying. And I'll say, oh, you just filled a prescription for 60 hydrocodone a week ago. What happened with that? And so that's an opportunity to counsel them, to try to get them help for drug addiction, drug dependence, that sort of thing. But we're cracking down on it for the safety of patients, to help so that they don't accidentally overdose, and do everything we can to help prevent it.
Because I played sports, and I was always taught to play through pain, and when you were in pain, that's your body talking to you. So if my ankle hurt really bad, that meant that probably not to walk on the ankle that day to rest it up, not necessarily take something to numb it up to make it worse. Is it a mindset? Is it a lack of education?
Both. I think, people don't understand. You don't have to jump to narcotics as first-line medication. Ice your ankle. Take some ibuprofen. But I think it comes down to educating patients, educating doctors so that they know, don't write, morphine and Dilaudid for a little ankle sprain. You can use conservative measures. But also, you've seen recently, these opioid companies being sued for over manufacturing billions of pills. And also, it's not just the pills, it's not just pharmacies and doctors writing prescriptions. We see illegal drugs coming from the southern border from Mexico, and fentanyl from China. That plays a huge role as well. So tackling, the online black markets. I think it's really important to have that prescription drug monitoring program so that we can type in their names and look up people to see where they're getting their prescriptions from. Do they have any history of overdoses? Are they what we call a frequent flyer? But we have to also remember there are some people with legitimate pain. Like if you
Right.
have terminal cancer or you broke your back, some people are truly in need of painkillers, and we can't make them deprived of the pain medicine and the pain relief that they need based on the irresponsibility of other people. So we can't forget them and ignore them and their needs. So you have to have a responsible healthcare practitioner that knows how to handle, how to manage, how to treat chronic pain in these patients as well, and not just dismiss them and say, no, I'm not writing you prescription.
Okay, let's get into, because vaping is the
Yeah.
new hot topic.
Yeah.
And it's become immediately, the first thing people want to do was we want the government to regulate, whether you could vape it or make it illegal. Is it the individual homemade stuff, do you think it is? Or you think it's the actual vaping of the nicotine, or is it the other stuff?
So that's the thing. Right now, the CDC is doing an investigation because we don't know exactly what is that one ingredient or two or three that's causing these people to die and putting them in respiratory distress, in the ICU, on ventilators. So we don't know exactly what it is, but a lot of us, we suspect it could be, counterfeit, adulterated, tarnished, bootleg, counterfeit, maybe marijuana cartridges.
Yeah.
But also it could be just the combination of you're heating up the ingredients of artificial flavors, propylene glycol and glycerin and nicotine. You heat it up in a vape. You could be inhaling all these chemicals together, which is causing an irritant to the lung. It causes inflammation in the lungs. And if it's laced with vitamin E or any type of oils, then it can act as a coating, like a coating to the lung, like oil on your lung. And you can't get air in and out. And you go into respiratory distress. You end up in the hospital. I've actually had patients, very young kids, teenagers, they come in, and when I listened to their lungs, it sounded like you're taking a piece of paper and crunching it together. And I said, oh, do you have asthma? And he said, no. He told me he was vaping and he was scared, but he was having trouble breathing. He was coughing and wheezing. I had to put him on steroids and give him breathing treatments. I had to do x-rays. And I said, look, we got to cut out the vaping because this is causing harm to your lungs. And he said that he wasn't using anything other than the pod that he actually got from a vape shop. And he wasn't even carded, he said. He looked old enough, I guess they didn't even ask for his ID. But it could be contaminated black market bootleg cartridges. It could be that they're smoking or vaping too much, too quickly, that it's causing inflammation to their lungs. And they could simply just be having an allergic reaction to the chemicals causing inflammation in their lungs where they can't breathe. But one thing that we're forgetting is these deaths that we're seeing, I think this just highlights the fact that vaping in teenagers is an epidemic, and it's growing. The number of teenagers and middle schoolers vaping has doubled, and I think a lot of them don't realize that it contains nicotine, which is highly addictive, and that it can cause potential harm to their lungs, and it can interfere if they participate in sports. They're not going to be, their performance may not be as good as it could be if they weren't, vaping. They could probably run a little faster, or swim a little faster, or jog a little faster. But on top of that, the studies show from the CDC that about half of these kids that vape, about half of them will go on in about a year to become regular cigarette smokers. And smoking is responsible for about 500,000 deaths every year and leads to heart attack and strokes. And who knows, some people even think maybe it's a gateway to other types of drugs. But I think the focus right now is we need to get these kids off of vaping. We need to educate them, have their parents educate them to prevent it. Now, vaping has been helpful for some adults to quit smoking, but it's important to understand that vaping is not the only way to quit smoking. We've got nicotine patches, we've got gum, we've got nasal sprays, we've got medications. Some people have successfully quit smoking with vaping, but that's not the only way, and everyone needs to be careful and know what you're inhaling. We really don't know all the exact ingredients in the e-juice, and hopefully the FDA will put in some more rules and regulations for transparency of what those ingredients are, and disciplinary action for any vape shop owners that try to sell to minors and minors who try to purchase illegally. So,
I would imagine that it would probably be a good idea to have vape shop owners have some form of license, some sort of accreditation that they can verify what they're selling. Because if it's anything like how weed was for a while, people were just buying from sellers. So hopefully, my advice would be, based off talking to you, would be don't vape until you have more information about it, just to be on the safe side.
You're absolutely right. The CDC says right now nobody should vape until we are able to finish this investigation and determine exactly what is causing this. So, and then our president is working to ban artificial flavors because that's what entices and lures the kids in to vape.
Well, thank you so much, Doc. I really appreciate the time. I feel so much smarter.
Well, thank you. Anything we can do to help educate.